Okay, let's continue with photosynthesis. We'll be looking at the process itself after we have looked at quite in depth the different photosynthetic pigments. All right. So the process of photosynthesis, right? In general, of course, we have this formula, right? Carbon dioxide and water is used to make glucose and oxygen. But how, right? How does this happen? So there are two main stages of photosynthesis: the light-dependent reactions and the Kelvin cycle. Kelvin cycle sometimes is called light-independent reactions also. But I'll just say Kelvin cycle because it's shorter, right? So we have the light-dependent reactions that occurs at the thylakoid membranes and the Kelvin cycle that occurs in the stroma. Okay, so for the light-dependent reactions, so actually when we look at the photosynthetic pigments, right, we have mentioned it already, right? So it is the process that light is absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments, and the light energy is then used to excite electrons, which then is used to make ATP and reduced NADP. So again, the conversion of light energy to chemical energy stored in ATP and reduced NADP. So that would be light-dependent reactions. For the Kelvin cycle, right, the ATP and reduced NADP that were made, right, in the light-dependent reactions are now used in Kelvin cycle to convert carbon dioxide to carbohydrates or glucose. Okay, so there's chemical energy in ATP and reduced NADP converted to chemical energy also, right, but in the form of glucose and carbohydrates. All right, so we're looking at the light-dependent reactions first. Again, at the thylakoid membranes, that's where the photosynthetic pigments are, and that's where light-dependent reactions occur. Light energy is absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments to excite electrons, which then makes ATP and reduced NADP. Okay, so three main reactions. We have the photoactivation of chlorophyll. That's when the light energy is absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments. The light energy is then passed to the special chlorophyll at the reaction center. So the special chlorophyll will then use the light energy that is passed to it to excite electrons. The excited electrons will be then passed to the electron transport chain. So that is photoactivation of chlorophyll. Right, so you see this before, right? So in the previous video, we have talked about this. So again, right, just to repeat, the clusters, right, of photosynthetic pigments that forms the photosystem, they will absorb light, right? And the light energy absorbed will be passed from one photosynthetic pigment to another until it reaches the special, right, chlorophyll in the reaction center. So the chlorophyll in the reaction center will use the light energy to excite the electrons that it has. The excited electrons will be then passed to the electron transport chain. Okay, so that's photoactivation. Then we have the photolysis of water, which is also occurring at the special chlorophyll, right, in the reaction center. So that's what we mentioned, right? In the photoactivation, the electrons of the chlorophyll is excited and donated away, passed to the electron transport chain. So now then the special chlorophyll in the reaction center got no electrons, right? So the electrons must be replaced. So that is done by the lysis of water using light energy. So photolysis of water. When the water is lysed or split, right, with light energy, it releases electrons. The electrons is then used to replenish, right, those that has been passed to the electron transport chain after excitation by the special chlorophyll in the reaction center. Besides electrons, there's also the protons that will be passed or that will be released into the thylakoid space, and then the oxygen is also released as a byproduct. So this is how photosynthesis actually produce oxygen. It's actually a byproduct of this photolysis of water reaction. Okay, so these are the chemical equation. Right, so then the third main reaction that occurs in the light-dependent reactions is the generation of reduced NADP and ATP. Right, so the excited electrons after the photoactivation of chlorophyll is passed to the electron transport chain, right? So this is a bit similar to respiration, the process, how the electrons passed down the electron transport chain from one electron carrier to another. Right, so the electron carriers will use the energy from the electrons to pump H plus from the stroma into the thylakoid space. So in the thylakoid space right now, we have this very high concentration of H plus or protons, and this high concentration is also called the proton multiforce. Okay, so with this high concentration, right, the H plus want to move back into the stroma, right? So that is done via the ATP synthase. Right, so the H plus can diffuse back from the thylakoid space into the stroma down the concentration or electrochemical gradient, right, through the ATP synthase. So that's a facilitated diffusion. And as the H plus moves through the ATP synthase, right, the ATP synthase then use the energy from the movement of the H plus to produce ATP, right, from ADP, adding ADP together with inorganic phosphate, PI, right, to form ATP. Right, so this is known as chemiosmosis. Okay, then at the end of the electron transport chain, we have this thing called NADP, which will accepts the electron, and it serves as the final electron acceptor. So then we get reduced NADP. All right. So at H1 level, you don't need all these details. Yeah, this is really too much. But since we have talked about the three reactions, right, I will just show you how they all work together. All right. So in the light-dependent reactions, there are different pathways. So this is one. This is called the non-cyclic pathway or non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay. So this is the photo system, right, with the cluster of photosynthetic pigments. So what happened here, we have the light energy, right, that's absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments and passed to the special chlorophyll in the center. That's the reaction center, right? So there is photoactivation. The special chlorophyll use the light energy to excite electrons, and the electrons are donated to the electron transport chain. Okay. There's also photolysis of water here to replace the electrons that have been donated from the special chlorophyll in the reaction center. So oxygen is also produced. Then we have the electron transport chain. So therefore we produce ATP, right? But here, there's at the end of this electron transport chain, the first one, there's no reduced NADP because the electrons is not accepted by NADP, is going into another photosystem. Right, so electrons is passed from one photosystem to another through via an electron transport chain. So here, right after the electron transport chain, the electrons like low energy already. So another photoactivation. Right, so light energy again absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments, passed to the special chlorophyll in the reaction center, which will re-excite these electrons. And these re-excited electrons is passed to another electron transport chain. Okay, so here no need photolysis of water because there's no need to replace the electrons because the electrons come from the previous photosystem, right? So here there is a constant supply of electrons, so no need to use photolysis to replace the electrons. Okay, so another ETC, so make more ATP, and at the end of the second ETC, right, there is the final electron acceptor, NADP, to accept the electrons, and also a proton to form NADPH or reduced NADP. Right, so this is one pathway, right? How light-dependent reactions converts the light energy absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments into ATP and reduced NADP, chemical energy, right, stored in ATP and reduced NADP. This is one pathway. This is the second pathway, which is called cyclic photophosphorylation or cyclic pathway. So here we have the photoactivation, excitement of electrons by light energy absorbed by the chlorophyll and also the carotenoids, right? No photolysis. The excited electrons pass to ETC to produce ATP, and then it returns to the photosystem. It turns to the special chlorophyll. So there's no NADP that accepts the electron. So here it's just a cycle. The electrons get excited, used to make ATP via the electron transport chain. Then no more energy already, right? Then go back to the chlorophyll to be excited again. Right, so no reduced NADP, no NADP that accepts the electron. So just different pathways to look at how the main reactions of light dependent reactions all work together to make ATP and reduce NADP. Again, too much details for H1, but just give you a clearer idea lah. So the gist is, right, your light dependent reactions occurs in the thyroid membranes. The initial reactants would be water, right, and ADP and inorganic phosphates PI and NADP. Then they will be used to make the products of light dependent reactions. We have the oxygen due to photolysis of water, ATP, right, using the energy from the excited electrons through the electron transport chain and ATP synthase, right? And then at the end of the electron transport chain, the electrons is eventually, right, accepted by NADP to form reduced NADP. And all this is driven, right, by light energy absorbed by the photosynthetic pigments, which excites the electrons. And then the excited electrons allows the formation of ATP and reduced NADP. Yeah? Right, so light energy converted to chemical energy in the form of ATP and reduced NADP. Okay? Right, so again, you don't need so much details. Right, the gist of what you need to know is, well, on this slide, but the details are there to give you a clearer picture of how the conversion happens. Okay?